Right, yes. Yeah, welcome to a brand new RGM podcast. Welcome to a new week of music and conversations here on the RGM Experience podcast. And today's guest is none other than Billy Bibby. Oh, mate. Hi, mate.
Hello.
How are you doing? You
You
all
all
right?
right? Yeah, all good, mate. All good.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, last time I saw you, I was really drunk at tram lines in real life. Um,
Right.
I keep only seeing you out and about, mate, when I've had a skinful. So I hope you get a better experience than me today, because I'm with
To
it.
be honest, I think we'd all had a few by that point as well. So we don't remember much of that night.
Brilliant, brilliant.
It's all good, mate. It's all
Yeah,
good.
so thanks for joining us on this podcast. Just looking back on previous guests, we like to find out, get to the nitty gritty of why you've become this artist and you've traveled this path in music. It's a fascinating conversation to have with anybody, and particularly you. You've had such a great story, and you've got loads of experiences to share with us all. But how did a young Billy Bibby in school? How did you first start to realize that music was for you, and you got drawn towards this industry called the music industry?
Well, I started playing guitar when I was about 10. But I'd always, even from growing up from a young age, my dad loved music and got me into like he was into all 60s stuff. So he got me into he was a massive Elvis fan, so I've been a big Elvis fan from growing up and listening to like even like Hank Marvin. That was my first guitar
Right.
inspiration. So that's why I still use like a Fender Stratocaster to this day, like because of that, really. So I started off listening to older music. Really, I didn't even understand my kind of era, which was the '90s growing up, and I didn't get into like people like Oasis till later on, really.
Yeah.
So for me, it was all about the '60s and '70s and that kind of music, and then like I said, I learned guitar properly when I was about 10.
Yeah.
And then
That just
and
begging
then
your
in,
parents for lessons, or just to get
yeah,
your
I
first
just
instrument?
yeah, I'd always had a guitar in the house, but I never knew how to play it as a kid. So I thought, well, let's get some lessons when I started, just before I started secondary school.
Yeah.
And then I only had a few lessons, really, a handful of lessons, and kind of just tried to pick it up myself, really. It was more about sort of just learning by ear, really, and learning, little. I wasn't too bothered about learning the ins and outs, just learning what things sort of made me feel good when I was playing guitar. Do you know what I mean? Not too
Yeah.
much about the technical side of it, just kind of the songwriting and the building up of something, kind of original. So that was the route I kind of went down, and then it wasn't for a good few years then after that I picked up the guitar properly again and got in, like, in fairly serious with, like, obviously Van McCann and Ben Blakeway, that started Catfish and the Bottlemen, which was around like sixth form time. So I was about 17, and Van was 2 years younger than me, so he was 15. So he was only really really young at the time, but we were starting touring and getting into clubs and venues and stuff whilst he was like 15. So so it started really really young age for us, really. So yeah, but I mean, I was into sports for most of it, and then I was into my football and playing that, and I wanted to be a footballer and that, and then I knew obviously I couldn't do that. So
Right.
that's when the band sort of took off, and I
Yeah.
realised that was when I realised that was my passion. Then I love a lot of other things, but I knew that music was going to be the one that stuck with me, really, from
You
that moment.
little Billy Baby, 10 years old, seeing this instrument in corner of room, decided to start playing it. How how
Mm.
how did you take to it? Did it come naturally to you to play?
Yeah, without sounding big-headed, I think it did, but not like, I don't think I'm a great guitarist by any means. I just think I've got a decent ear for it, so that I kind of just picked it up quite quickly. The two lads that I was doing lessons with in school, they'd be doing lessons for 3 years, and I was better than them after about a month. So I kind of knew that I was, above average.
Yeah.
But I've not got any better since, like, but but yeah, so I just knew that was kind of going to be one of the paths I was going to sort of choose, as I got a little bit older then.
Yeah. And what was it like in school before you met the lads and things started to take off? Was there any other vibes around musicians around you at 10-year-old, 11, 12-year old, or was, Billy the one that was known as, this person
Um,
that's going to be a guitarist one day?
yeah. I mean, I remember doing. We had to do like a music exam, and everyone had to go in the middle of the classroom and play a piece of either whatever they learnt, either singing or guitar or whatever. And that was my first thing I'd done in front of anyone,
Mm.
and I got like 20 out of 20 for doing it. I played Pretty Woman by Roy Orbison,
Oh,
and
okay.
did the intro bit, the do and then did all that, and then played the song the whole way through the chords. And I was only like what 11 then, so I think that was the first kind of thing where everyone was like, wow, he's not bad for a young lad. Um, and then, but then, to be fair, like for a few years, then, like I said, I got into football and I was more into sports and that.
Yeah.
So the guitar took a back burner for a good few years until, like I said, till
Mm.
I met up with Van McCann properly and Ben um, in school, and Ben was in my year in school. That was when we kind of thought, well, we can get a band together here.
When you,
And we,
when you're in school, 2 years is a massive difference between like years
yeah,
and stuff when you're looking back at school, isn't it? So how did you and Ben find this younger kid, Van? How did you figure out that something
yeah.
could a relationship could start there?
Van's best friends with my brother. He was in school,
Oh,
so
okay.
my brother was in the same year. So he just came up to me and he was always like, "You're good on guitar, aren't you? Will you teach me how to play guitar? Because I want to be in a band and all this." So he'd come round to our house all the time because obviously he's mates with my brother. So he'd come round. I'd start teaching him the basic chords and that, and I was teaching Ben at the time because Ben didn't know how to play.
Yeah.
So it just started off. It was like any band. It started off innocently, naive, literally just trying to play covers between each other, and Van had a good voice. So and I've got a decent voice. So we were singing between us.
Mm.
And then eventually just started writing original stuff. But even that was as most people, it's a bit crap at first, but that's how you learn, isn't it? So
Yeah.
yeah, but that's kind of how it started, and then it was just like, where can we do our first gig, and then it was like the pub up the road, so we'd get booked in there for like they had like a summer festival thing on,
Yeah.
and we just do covers and stuff like that, and throw a couple of original ones in that we'd wrote, but it was it just started off like that really, as most bands do, I
Yeah.
suppose, at that age.
Was were there
Nothing,
any
nothing.
were there any other bands around you that you looked up to, or that have progressed to this day, or a few bands that that you looked up to that aren't really doing it now, but at the time were showing promise, and they might be doing like gigs in London or in other towns, anything
Yeah,
like that?
well, the first band that we went to go and watch, and Van was too young to get in really, but he blagged his way in. It was in Chester, and it was to watch a band called The Time, and they were like, they're probably about 10 years older than us, so they were coming up to like 30 odd, something like that. What by the time we watched them, um, and they were playing at Alexander's in Chester, and we'd made the trip down there like as young like teenagers, and we were all excited to watch them and thought they were like massive stars and that, even though they were only playing to like 100 people. And we just it was like it was one of the teachers actually, our PE teacher in our school was mates with him, and he said, listen to this band. So we were listening to him, and like I said, we thought they were like celebrities at the at our age and stuff, but they were only playing to like 200, 300 caps, but going down London, playing London, doing the circuit. So we met up with him, and that was when like the drummer Ben Taylor said to us, we'll get you on a gig. Like, so that was our first proper gig when we supported them, and they were our first heroes. Like, you know what I mean? Because they're a decent, solid band. Like,
Yeah.
still listen to their tunes today. Like, but they split up a couple of years after that.
Yeah.
So yeah, bands like that really were our biggest inspiration at the time, really. And then obviously, like 2007, 2008, and stuff like that. The indie scene was big, so we're listening to bands like The Enemy and that have obviously come back recently with a tour announcement. But yeah, that bands like that were massive for us, and the obvious
Tiring,
start to
don't they,
look.
and coming back. They can't let it go, them, can they?
No, they can't. No, I mean, I that first album for me was amazing. Like, so I love that, and I still listen to that to this day. Like, but if you've got that passion for it, it's just it is what it is. You've got to keep doing it, haven't you? I suppose you can't get away from it.
You can't, and the reason why I've ended up starting a magazine is because I can't let music go. After being in a band and everybody else got boring and started having kids and couldn't commit to it anymore, I needed something else to do, and I ended up naturally creating this. I'd never set up off to start a magazine, but you're right. Just organically, this thing's. I started interviewing people at gigs, needed a website. It became RGM, and I've just cracked on with it. And it's just you can't leave. You can't let it go, can you? Music. It's always going to be. I know it's always going to be with me. And it looks like it's always going to be with you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I've always said, like, people say you're still going to keep doing it, like, and that even though you're still trying to get to the top or whatever. But as long as I'm enjoying it, that's all I say. As long as I'm enjoying it. If I don't enjoy it anymore and I want to do something else, I'll do something else. But the money's never been a factor for me. It's not about the money. It's just about being able to play in front of people, and most musicians will tell you, like, when they come off, when they're on stage and they're seeing people enjoy themselves, that's the best buzz you can ever get from seeing people enjoy themselves. It's better than anything, any drug, any alcohol, sex, whatever. It's better than all of that. It's the best feeling in the world to play in front of people and get that buzz. So even if you're playing to 3 people.
Well, you mentioned there, the band just started to form, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old, and you started writing your first songs. Did you have different band names in those times, or did you know there's anything amusing that you could share with us?
Well, we were initially called The Prestige. That's where we were initially called. After, I think, that film, The Prestige, came out around that time, and then we took that name. And I remember on our first gigs, it was at Roadhouse in Manchester. I don't think it's there now. Is it Roadhouse? Yeah, Roadhouse, I think it's called. On the corner, and this girl was doing some drawing and stuff, so we made her draw the artwork for Prestige whilst we were there at the gig, and she did that, and we kept that for a bit. And then we wrote a song called Roadhouse. And that was the only name we had before then, Catfish. And then Van said, I was on holiday when I was younger, and there was this guy called Catfish the Bottlemen. And I really think it'd be a cool and unusual name for us. So we were all against it at first. Like, the rest of the band were against it. If it wasn't for Van, it probably wouldn't have been Catfish and the Bottlemen. It probably would have stuck with the Prestige, or maybe, I don't know, something else. But it wouldn't have been that.
Fair enough.
So he kind of pushed it on us, and we like, right, we'll let it sit for a few weeks and see how we feel, because it's not one of them names that hits you. It hits you in terms of, like, the unusual, sounding of it, but it doesn't hit you as in, like, that's a rock and roll band name. Do you know what I mean? It kind of sounded a bit folky to us at first. Don't know what it sounds like to you, like, but I wasn't happy with it at first.
Okay, well, I know from people that worked with you in the early days, and my mate Neil Hargreaves from Sheffield just tells me about how hard you guys worked in the early days, just trying to get the name of the band out there. So you started writing your own songs and that kind of stuff. What then changed for you to focus on making it happen and making it into a career and doing all the hard work stuff that people don't really see behind the scenes? How did that develop into being a thing?
I think just wanting to get out there and gig, really. I mean, like you said, Neil was a good. He was great for us at the start. because sorry, just had something on my phone.
Right.
Yeah, Neil was great at first for us, especially getting into places like Sheffield and big cities and that. He'd push the Sheffield, and then we'd have someone like Neil in Manchester, that we'd kind of befriended, and then same in Liverpool and London and that. And it was just about building that contacts and that rapport with people that, outside of your hometown. And I think what helped us, because we were from such a small town
Yeah.
in Llandudno in North Wales, that it kind of made us just get out. Do you know what I mean? And go to these places rather than settle on a lot of bands these days. And it happens to a lot of Manchester bands. I think they get a good following going because Manchester's got a great music scene.
Yeah.
And then they kind of sit on that success of being a good Manchester band, and they go out somewhere else like London or whatever, and then they're like, well, there's only 10 people here.
Yeah.
But and that can kind of kill a band at times because they're used to that success of being successful in their hometown. So I think for us, it was good to just get out to these different places, knowing that we couldn't. There was no proper venue where we were really.
How did you physically find it? Because networking is massive, and it comes up in pretty much in every interview that I do with people in the industry, just how important it is to network. How did you find somebody in London? How did you find someone in Liverpool? How did you find somewhere in Manchester? I know we know about Neil in Sheffield. How did you find Neil?
Yeah.
Did you what kind of tips would you give people watching this that are looking to do a similar kind of thing, get out their own city? How did you make that happen?
Well, I think things have changed a little bit since when we were doing it, which was 10 years ago. Now you can kind of find all the contacts you need on things like LinkedIn and all the social media platforms, which can, if you type in whatever Sheffield promoter or something like that, you'll find it on the internet. Us back in the day, it was more about just getting a gig there and then going out and talking to whoever was there at the gig. Do you know what I mean? And then at that point, we'd get another gig a few months down the line, and keeping the cycle going, and then meeting new people. And it was a little bit more like how word of mouth kind of works back then for us, which was just whoever we met, we'd get in a conversation with and sort of befriend and see what kind of role they do in, or whether they could just be a fan or whatever. Or then we bump into people like Neil. So it was more like kind of word of mouth thing.
Yeah.
This day and age, I think things like just being pretty savvy on social media and things like LinkedIn and stuff. You can search for anyone on that, that works in any industry these days. So I use that quite a bit, and our manager does. So yeah. But yeah, like back then, it was a little bit different. It was more about just kind of gigging, and back then I think
were you busking and that kind of stuff as well, and busking in the
we did
cities
a bit of
before the gig
busking.
and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, we did it when we first went over to Scotland. There's pictures floating around of us playing on the streets in Glasgow and Edinburgh and stuff before we had the gig that night. We used to do that. We used to, which a lot of I think big sort of Catfish fans will probably have heard the story, but we used to have a van that obviously we used to get to the gigs with, and then we'd fire up the generator and we'd put these ninja masks on, so people couldn't see who we were, and we'd fire up the generator and plug everything in and play a gig outside of a venue or in the city where we were playing that day. So we do that quite a lot. We did it once. We played in Birmingham. Well, we were supposed to play in Birmingham, but they said that I can't remember the story now, but we couldn't play that gig anyway. So we made the trip down to Birmingham. Couldn't play the gig for whatever reason. They wouldn't let us play. So we just fired up the generator outside the venue and played outside whilst the gig was going on. So everyone that was coming out having a fag break, we were like, who are these lot outside the venue here playing? So yeah, so that things like that. And then outside the Kasabian gig in I think Manchester, I think that was, and we did that as everyone was coming out from the Kasabian gig. We started playing, and then it started pissing it down. So we got all our equipment ruined, but it's worth it. We still have fans to this day that came and watched that from that cassette coming out of that Kasabian gig. So
I've picked up people when when I've been in gigs and this band's outside handing out the CDs, that does
Mm.
that's a massive and easy thing to do for a band to do to try and find new fans because you're giving your
Yeah,
music to music loving people, so they're already
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of your audience. They might not be,
yeah,
they might not end up being a fan for life, but they'll probably give your CD a listen, and if they like you, there's a chance that they might go and see you live again. So
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
surprised I don't see more of that.
Yeah, well, if you throw enough mud, some sticks. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like I still do it now. We've got the venue Cymru, which is like, we've Stereophonics are playing there in a couple of weeks. Paul Weller's playing there this Friday, I think, which is like 2,000 cap place. So what we used to do is, because we were obviously local to that venue, um, was just go into the car park and put CDs in all the cars that were there in the car park. And I still do that now. I get beer mats printed with HAiG on, and I still whenever I know there's a big band on, I'll go round whilst the gig's on and put beer mats in every
Yeah.
window wiper. You know what I mean? And it works. Like, you
Yeah.
get people saying, "I've just had a beer mat or a CD from these lot."
They'll post it on the
that put
socials, won't they?
Yeah,
It's
so
free
yeah.
promotion. Yeah.
So, yeah, and I've put a QR code on the beer mat now, so it can't get any easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So,
So yeah, little tips like that, I think bands should be doing more of. I think you don't see enough of that, really.
no, you definitely don't, and that's great tips because this podcast's all about sharing experiences
Yeah.
and trying to
Mm.
help these poor bastards out there that are trying to make try and make a living
Yeah.
in music because it's the toughest industry in the world.
Mm.
You're never going to get anything handed to you. But
No.
it happened to you in Catfish. So what was the first time when you looked at each other and thought it's happening?
I don't think there's ever a moment when you look at each other and think that, because you're working so hard. We were in the practice room every day, like,
Yeah.
and gigging all the time, like the constant gigging. And they seem to have carried that work ethos on even since I left. Like, they've never really stopped touring. But I don't think there's ever a moment when you kind of feel like you're doing well and things are progressing. It's more like a progression thing, and it just
Yeah.
builds up, and you like, well, we've sold out, a few hundred cap, and then you go on to the next level, and it just builds up. It progressed slowly with us. I mean, it might happen to some bands, like, some top, like, sensations that kind of just go from doing no gigs to going
Yeah.
huge if they get signed to a massive record label. But for us, it was like we did every stepping stone possible. From the smallest venues and playing covers and stuff, to them doing our own stuff, and then building up, and then got to a point where we had a small label in Communion on board. So that wasn't a big record deal, but it was they're quite well renowned label now, Communion. And then from there it went to Island Records. So it took every stepping stone. So it was never like one moment where you thought, you just knew, you just could feel it happening. You know what I mean? You just the progress of it all more than anything.
What was playing the festivals an indicator for you? Like getting on the playing the bigger stage where you were as a band at the time. So if you're playing, like, I don't know, a 500, 600 cap venue, and you're playing a festival that's maybe 10,000 people out there.
Yeah.
Are those kind of moments the time when you think?
Yeah, having you saying that has just sparked a memory of, like, there was one moment in terms of playing a gig where you kind of went from feeling like not many people knew you to, like, what's going on here, was when we played Tea in the Park. And we played in the biggest tent. I can't remember what the tent was called, but we played in this tent, and we were like one of the first bands on, and everyone was coming to watch us. And then when we stepped out on stage, it was a massive roar. Everyone was singing the songs that we just released, and were like getting played on Radio 1 and stuff. So that was, I think that was probably the moment there when I remember coming off stage and thinking, wow, that's special. Do you know what I mean? And the Scottish crowds have always been like the best crowds for me. They're just mad for the music and that. And that was probably the moment. Yeah, Tea in the Park.
Yeah. So not with the band anymore. How do you look back on Catfish now and reflect on the experience and moving on into your solo stuff?
Just as I don't really look back on it, to be
Yeah.
honest. I'll try and look forward, to be honest. You know, every I still acknowledge Catfish every time. I still do little posts now and again about Catfish on social media, whether it's an anniversary of the balcony and stuff or whatever, because that I was a part of that and it was a massive part of my life. So I still look back on it with great memories and stuff. I don't regret anything that's happened or anything like that. So it's all good. But I just obviously try and look forward with my band now, and that's all I can do really. It's what I'm enjoying the
Yeah.
most. So yeah.
I can remember seeing you back in Sheffield again when you played a first solo tour. Billy Bibby's playing the Frog and Parrot again in Sheffield. I love the Frog and Parrot.
Yeah,
I keep talking
yeah.
about it, but it's where I've put gigs on for years and where I first started putting bands on
Yeah,
and just doing just putting bands on. I don't know how else to
yeah,
describe it. So the solo experience and then HAiG and that. So how was the journey? How did it feel going from the big festival slots to
mm.
kind of like starting again a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I think it got I've said it before, but I think the best bit really for me was not was when I left the band, and
Mm.
what we weren't at like massive arena stages or
Right.
even big sort of venues really at that
Yeah.
point. I think we just about sold out the Ritz and places like that,
Okay.
and I think maybe the O2 Academy at Sheffield, but I hadn't actually played those gigs yet.
Mm.
Um, so for me, it was like it wasn't coming down too much.
Yeah.
I'd done 6 years of all that playing those venues, um, and I knew that I could do it again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I hadn't gone to that sort of them extremes of levels. It might have been a bit more difficult if we'd been playing arenas for a few years,
Yeah.
and then I came back down to that. But um, I'm not a proud person, like really. I just enjoy what I do, and it doesn't. I'm not one of those guys. I'm too big for anything. I'm not. It's you if you're starting again, you're starting again. You've got to just roll your sleeves up and get stuck in. And that's what I wanted to do straight away. So I did my solo stuff first because obviously I was lead guitarist in Catfish, so I wanted to learn how to become a frontman.
Mm.
So I
Did you go
wrote
to
enough
frontman
songs for a
school?
set. Hey?
You go to frontman school?
No, yeah, well, kind of. No, I still think of myself as more of a guitarist frontman. I don't
Right.
like my band now. They say you're not a proper frontman because you're not an arsehole.
All right. Okay. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
So I'll take that compliment. But yeah, so no, I wanted to learn how to sort of interact with the people. Like Van was very good at doing that, and learn how to kind of it. As much as I don't class myself as a front man, I don't think I come across as being shy. Do you know
Mm.
what I mean? So that was the main thing for me, was not coming across as looking like I shouldn't be there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just getting myself comfortable and accustomed to talking to people on stage, and looking confident. Do you know what I mean? Whilst I play the songs. So that was the main thing for me. The year after leaving Catfish was getting my confidence up and
Yeah.
doing that. And then we started the Rye Smiles, Billy Bibby and the Rye Smiles band, which was a great few years. Like loved doing that. We played a lot of good festivals,
Did
did a
you
lot
know
of
as a
good gigs.
soloist that you're destined to be back with more people around you? Did you was that just something you were aware
Yeah,
of at the time?
yeah, definitely. I think because I did enjoy being on my own, because I had my brother with me as tour manager and stuff, so we were going around together and that, and it was great. But yeah, when you've got that, you can look to your left and look to your right, and you've got those lads like playing with you
Yeah.
on the same stage. There's no better feeling than that, and I don't think I could ever really be a solo artist. So I mean, I took the Billy Bibby and the Rice Smiles because of, really, it was more like I didn't know these people that were coming in. Really, they were coming in, and we'd had a few rehearsals together,
Mm.
but I didn't want to commit to putting a band name behind it, because of we didn't know a few months down the line whether something might happen. So I thought, if I keep Billy Bibby and the Rice Smiles, if something does happen, then you know it can change and not break the whole band up completely. Do you know what I mean? Because it's different from when you start in school together to when you're, just meeting people for the first time and then getting straight into a tour with them. So it was different. It was different. But the people that I did meet and that came on tour with us with the Rice Smiles, great lads, really good lads. And yeah, just had a great laugh for a few years doing that and played some good gigs. So yeah,
Any of those people in HAiG now, or are they? Is HAiG?
no, no, no. They kind of went off and did their own thing, like their own jobs and that. Obviously, the money in it is not great at that level, so it's hard keeping a band together and that. There was no like fallouts or anything like that. It was just a purely kind of professional thing for them to go off and do their own what they wanted to do with their own jobs and stuff. If things would have taken off like properly, then we would have been together. But in some ways, I kind of see it as a bit of an apprenticeship again for myself and the band, because I was getting back into writing songs fully myself. You know what I mean? It was Van kind of penning a lot of the songs, and I was helping structure with the guitar parts and that. So I was working with him with that, but I wasn't writing the songs. So for me, it was learning how to do that properly again. And yeah, now with HAiG, we know exactly what we're doing. We know which direction we're going in.
How did you how did you come across the band? How did you? Because I know from talking to people that are soloists and they get to a certain stage when they think, if I'm going to get anywhere, I need a band behind me, because the industry kind of demands that in a way. How did you find the people to join you in HAiG and the right people as well?
Well, I was actually at that time, the Rice Smiles had split up, and I was having a little bit of time off from it, to be honest, because it was a lot of like to-ing and fro-ing with the last 7 or 8 years or whatever, was peak band members leaving. I left Catfish or whatever. It was a lot of things happening in that, and I thought, well, let's just have a bit of time off and think what I actually want to do and get it right this time. So Carl actually approached me, the bass player of our band now in HAiG. I'd done a solo gig for him in the Blackburn Rovers bar, because he's a Blackburn Rovers fan. Unlucky for him, but yeah, he invited me to that, and I played the gig for him. And then he said a few months later, he was like, "Our band have just split up, New York Tourists. Do you want to join forces?" So I said, "Yeah, I've got a guitar," because my guitarist from the Rice Smiles was up for it, and his drummer was up for it. So we had two halves of the band there. We put them together, had a few rehearsals, and yeah, we just knew straight away. Really, I'm originally from Accrington, so it felt a bit full circle, and I felt like I knew them as soon as we got rehearsing together. I just knew it was right. Carl and Joe are great lads, and yeah, and we just went from there really. So we started gigging again, and that's when COVID hit. So that put a dent in the sort of progression for us, because we just signed to Golden Robot Records in Australia. So we had the EP plans to put that out, and we ended up putting that out just after COVID. So it didn't have the impact we wanted, but yeah, just being in a band with them two, you can tell like it's great. I've been in some great people. I had some great people in bands before, but when you just know and you just connect and click with two of the lads, like because we're a 3-piece now, which is I find a little bit easier than 4.
Yeah. Just easier to get the same people in the same place.
Yeah.
With less, I suppose. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, we're working with like a backing track thing now as well, just to give us a little bit more meat behind the tracks. So he's our 4th member, but yeah, just the 3 of us, we just work really well together. So as soon as we could get out of the COVID restrictions and gig again, we got straight on it, and we've done quite a few gigs since now. Some good ones as well. So yeah, so looking forward to now to the future, and hopefully get an album out next year.
Oh, okay. That's what I'm going to ask you. What are you allowed to say about what are HAiG up to next year? Is there anything you can share with us that
Yeah,
you're allowed to say?
yeah, we're just looking to try and just get as many gigs as we can, get a tour booked in for March and April, hopefully, and just get on the road for a good few weeks, and then look to release a few singles later on after that, and probably this time next year, I would have thought, hopefully we get the album out.
Mm.
So we're working on that now. We've already done one track with a producer that we're hoping to work the album with.
Yeah.
And he's top. He's a top producer, like. So yeah, we've done that. That's sounding great so far. So hopefully, fingers crossed, if nothing else happens in this crazy world, we'll be
Well, touching all the
we'll be releasing that album next year. Touch all the wood you can.
Oh, brilliant. Well, you know, yeah, I know just from behind the scenes just how hard you're working at, you know, making this HAiG thing happens, and you know, I can't wait to see what you've got coming up next year. I'll be sharing everything I can. So if if you do tune into RGM, tag HAiG into stuff as well. Get involved with a band. You know, who knows? You might find your next favorite band in the world. That's every time I press send on Twitter or something. That's the kind of thing I've got in the back of my head. You know,
Yeah.
people see this potentially they can find your next favorite band, and I wish you all the best. I'm definitely. I know I weren't able to catch you in Manchester recently, but I'm definitely going to catch you next time you're about, mate. And we'll come down and catch the band. I'll put a pint in front of you because I really appreciate your time today, mate.
Nice one,
Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the world around Billy Bibby?
We're playing South. If anyone's listening from South Sea, we're playing that. We're playing that this Sunday. I don't know if that's too soon. It's not far away, but yeah, playing South Sea on Sunday.
Yeah.
So come down to the Gaiety Bar. But yeah, and we'll be touring next year and stuff. So check our dates out and stuff.
Yeah, you know what? I'll put your website and everything on the description in this podcast. The podcast will be out after that date, but I'll put all the HAiG socials in. Just look down in the description. Get involved with the band, ladies and gentlemen. We've really enjoyed speaking to you today, Billy. Well, I say we. I've really enjoyed speaking to you today, Billy.
Who else is there?
I know there's nobody. Yeah, mate. Really appreciate your time. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the new year, bud.
Cheers, Carl. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, mate. Thanks again.